Welcome back to Urban View Mornings with Shawna Renee. We are inside another hour. It is 9 a.m. on the dot on the East Coast. Very early, 6 a.m. out west. Good morning, y'all. It is Tuesday, June the 30th, 2026. Today celebrating the birthday of Mike Tyson and Fantasia, as well as Lena Horne, I mentioned earlier, too. We are also celebrating the birthday of my son, the 20th anniversary of me becoming a mother. Yes, happy birthday, boo. It is also Black Music Month and Pride Month. And the number here, 1-866-801-8255. And maybe we'll take calls, but I think in the next 30 minutes or so, you're going to want to listen because we've got a couple of phenomenal women in studio with us, and I can't wait to start this conversation. But first, let me introduce them to you. Actually, I don't think I have to introduce Dr. Cheryl LaRoche. I feel like this is the third time we've talked. I think so. So can we now officially call you a friend of the show?
And you can officially call me Cheryl.
Okay, Cheryl. Now, that might be difficult. But I'll try. Anyway, Dr. Cheryl LaRoche is a historical archaeologist. She's an author and public historian who has served on the original team that excavated the president's house in Philadelphia. We will be talking about that. Surfacing the lives of the 9 people that George Washington enslaved there. She is also the author of Free Black Communities and the Underground Railroad, and the new illustrated chapter book for younger people called The Resurrectors. Welcome back, Cheryl.
Thank you so much for having me. Yes, I'm so excited to be here.
And also, let's welcome to the show then for the first time, Sheilah Vance. She's an attorney, a journalist, and a historian, a Philadelphia area native who grew up in Rebel Hills and Gulf Mills and on the ground where George Washington's army camped on its way to Valley Forge. She is the author of Threshold to Valley Forge, the 6 days of the Gulf Mills encampment, the first full-length account of the 6 days that set the course for Valley Forge, recovering the free Black people and enslaved Africans in Washington's ranks. So welcome to Urban View Mornings. Good to have you here.
Thank you so much, and I'm happy to be here.
Oh, man, it is a pleasure to have both of you here. Yeah, let's move you just a little closer to the microphone. There you go. We just got to get everybody. This is why I love having people in studio, too, but you just got to be a little patient with us. All right, so ladies, we have been talking about the country's 250th, anniversary, celebration, commemoration. Like, I'm having a difficult time with that word. What are you calling it as we kind of have this conversation about, I guess, the 250th year of existence?
I think existence, commemoration.
Okay.
I don't think anniversary or celebration are right, particularly what's happening. We don't want to really think about it as a celebratory moment because it's not.
Okay. And so, we'll say... Okay, we'll figure it out. Commemoration.
Well, for now, we'll put a pin in it.
Let's put a pin in that.
Commemoration's a good word.
Commemoration. Let's call it a commemoration. So, but you all will be sharing the stage in Philadelphia on Monday, yes, right? To tell, I guess, a side of the story that most Americans have never learned. So why don't we actually start off by talking about the same ground and what this is, what you are attempting to do, what people can expect. Hopefully, if you're in Philadelphia, you'll participate, or if you're around, because Philadelphia is close by to a lot of our East Coast cities.
Yes.
Well, I would say that initially we had conceived this to be a book signing and talking about our books, and I was going to talk about The Resurrectors and the children's book that I've written. We resurrect histories that perhaps people wouldn't know, and the first one is about Henry Highland Garnett. Mm-hmm. However, with the latest ruling for the President's House site, I have decided that I cannot let this moment pass without talking about the 16 panels that were not restored and without talking about the kind of lack of respect and the deliberate efforts to suppress, to kill off, to miseducate America. And so that is going to be the main focus of the time that I have for that night, although that wasn't the original intent of our time together.
Mm-hmm. And we'll get into a real conversation about the panels, because I feel like the first time you were here, they had taken the panels down. And then the second time you were here, they made the decision that the panels had to go back up.
Yes.
And then just a couple of weeks ago, like it was like Father's Day weekend, right before, there was a decision that they have to go up, but the president can decide what goes on them?
I've seen the replacement.
Okay.
And one of the arguments is that the replacement panels are essentially talking about the things that the original panels were talking about. And my question is, if that's the case, then why replace them?
Right.
But we'll talk about the replacement because it's a magic show.
Oh, okay. All right. Very good. Well, actually, you know what? Why not get into that? I want to bring this story up though, because I just saw this story. There's a national park ranger. Her name was Elizabeth Curran, who used to be the exhibit planner at West Virginia's Harper's Ferry
I
National
was just
Park.
at Harper's Ferry.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. And so talk to me about what she's doing, because from what I'm hearing is that the people are trying to find a way to get around.
Always. I studied the Underground Railroad. We will always find a way to get around. I was just at Harper's Ferry and the same thing happened. I didn't have Elizabeth, but we had a retired park ranger who took us through and gave us an alternative history of the place. When you went to Harper's Ferry, originally, it was a fairly balanced, it wasn't, what do I want to say? They hadn't whitewashed the history. Now when you go, of course, they're trying to remove references to slavery. They're trying to not have you talk about maybe John Brown as a pretty flashpoint of a person. And so when you go now, we went to Lockwood House where, they had the Niagara movement where we had so much African American history. We had a special tour for that.
Oh, nice.
But it wasn't something that was open to the public. We went as historians.
Okay.
So and it's not just Harper's Ferry. It's not just the President's House site. There are sites across the country that are being, all of the power, all of the real important, powerful narrative is either being taken out or being watered down, or the language is changing. And so that it's not that they don't have the topics. It's that they're taking out the power and the sort of direct communication about what happened.
And I feel like this is a silly question, but I do have to ask, why?
That's not a silly question.
Well, I know, but
it's not.
It almost feels like an obvious question, but something tells me it may not be as obvious as we think.
And what I'm finding is that people are saying to me, I've looked at the panels and they're still talking about slavery, and you have to help me understand what the problem is. I don't quite get it. So let's just be clear. There is an all-out war on Black history. There is an all-out war on Black preservation. There is an all-out war on Black memory. There is an attempt to lobotomize not just African Americans, but the American public, so that you will forget, because it is memory that keeps these things alive. It is memory that helps us move through and remember the power and the strength. And Black history, and let's be very clear about this, the reason why often Black history isn't taught is because, it's so empowering. It empowers our children. It empowers us. It helps us really gather strength. It's like going to church every Sunday. It gathers strength. And that history is something that has always been a touchstone for us.
I often say too about Black history is that it absolutely empowers us, but it doesn't just do that, because I feel in non-Black children, before their parents really get a hold to them, it builds empathy in a way. And I feel in a sense too that those who do not want their children to empathize and to actually see the humanity in folks unlike themselves are working really hard to ensure that doesn't happen.
It builds empathy when an empathetic teacher teaches it.
Okay.
But it used to build shame because, you were always poor, downtrodden, so that the way it depends on who's teaching it and how it's being taught, because it can be delivered in a way that is demeaning, degrading, and really belittling. And that is something that we have to also guard against, because when you have people other than yourselves in control of your history, you get what you get. The questions that someone else asks is different from the questions that we might ask. That question of why might not come up in a different setting.
Yeah, that's true.
And so we have to be in control. We have to ask the questions, and we have to be there to really understand the power and the strength, so that we can pull it out and talk about it and not say that it's shameful that you came from this past that had slavery in it. It's shameful that we came from a country that had slavery in it.
Sure.
I just want to jump in and say that I think as we commemorate America 250, I think it's important to celebrate the role of African Americans who fought in the American Revolution, in the Revolutionary War. And again, in discovering our history, that's kind of what I've tried to do in my work, is do the research and honor these patriots of African descent who fought in the American Revolution for freedom. Either they were free African Americans who believed what the Declaration of Independence said about all men are created equal and wanted to make sure that this new country lived up to that promise, or they were enslaved African Americans who were forced to travel with their enslavers and do what they could to fight in this war, hoping that this new country that was promised, again, all men created equal, would fulfill, their work would help fulfill that promise. Or they were enslaved African Americans who were sent as substitutes by their enslavers, just like they sent the enslaved persons to go fight in the fields. To work in the fields, they sent enslaved people to go fight the British. So they hoped, well, maybe this country would live up to its freedom ideals. And as we were talking about earlier, there were 10 to 15,000 African Americans enslaved who went and fought for the British. Because again, it was a war. The American Revolution was a war for freedom, and that was everyone's freedom. But the patriots of African descent who fought in the Revolutionary War, we need to understand their stories and honor them the same as anyone else. The typical white male soldier is honored for his participation in the American
And that's
Revolution.
a story. And I'm so glad that you brought that up. And we were actually going to really get into that because that is a story that is not often told. I think the only thing I ever remember here, did I hear something about the first shot that rang out was, by a black man, that's what we learned, right? That's like, but then beyond that, like no one asked, well, who was Crispus and where did he come from? And, and why was he even participating at the time? And more importantly, what was he promised? Because we've talked about, I have an ancestor who was a black loyalist.
Yes.
And so they fought simply because they were given promises of freedom if the British won.
Correct.
Obviously they didn't. And so they shipped my folks up to Canada.
Yes.
But I know that several others were eventually made their way back. They repatriated back to Sierra Leone and other areas as well.
And then thousands of others, when they were captured, I always often talk about this story, at the Battle of Yorktown, when the United States essentially won the Revolutionary War, thousands of African Americans were fighting there for the British. But when that war was over, the founding fathers or the officers of the Revolutionary War for the United States sent those people back into slavery.
Yes.
So,
and to be clear, George Washington loses people during this war. They escape from him during the battles, and they leave Mount Vernon in the Potomac. They end up going up to Halifax and Nova Scotia, and then repatriating back to Sierra Leone. So even Washington is directly connected to this history that we're talking about.
Absolutely. Washington, all throughout the Revolutionary War, had his enslaved person, Billy Lee, with him. Billy Lee was married to Hannah Till. She cooked for Washington. But for the United States, for that side during the war, there were 5,000 to 8,000 African Americans who fought for the United States. And a lot of my work, again, we talk about Valley Forge. There were 772 African Americans who marched out of Valley Forge. So that's no small number.
Right.
And Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, particularly through the great work of the Valley Forge alumni chapter, has put a monument at Valley Forge called Patriots of African Descent. It's beautiful. And it's on the grounds where the 1st and 2nd Rhode Island regiments had their huts, and they were essentially, it went back and forth between the 1st and the 2nd, essentially African-American units. It's on the same ground where they stayed. So that's very important. I just have to add that African-Americans were not allowed to join the Continental Army as per George Washington, because they were afraid of African Americans having guns and turning them on their enslavers. So the African Americans could fight in the various state militias up until February 1778, when Rhode Island could not fill its quota of free white men with free white men. So they said, General Varnum, whose papers I found during the research for my book, General Varnum said, look, Washington, why don't we buy the freedom of the enslaved people in Rhode Island and then put them into the Continental Army in place of these free white men, which they couldn't find. And then hopefully we'll get the money from the Continental Congress later to pay back the enslavers who owned these people, because slavery was legal in all 13 states at the time of the American Revolution, 1777, which I write about, to 1778 at Valley Forge.
Sounds a lot like prison, doesn't it? Yes. But that's not what we're talking about here.
Not yet.
Just, why don't we just buy these and then we'll bring them over here and have them do our dirty work.
Do
and
all
then,
the work. They did all the things.
That's
all
right.
The
And then we'll
roles.
just make sure that everyone else except them are compensated for all of the hard work that we're done. So bringing the two of you together then, I think this is very interesting to bring you together on Monday and together here, because you're talking about George Washington from two different perspectives. But, I was saying earlier, we were talking just about the way that history is taught, and especially what we learn about George Washington, like they lie. Yes. We learned that he could never tell a lie. He was an honest man. And we learned about the wooden teeth, only to later come to find out that, he obviously owned people. He enslaved people, and some of those enslaved people's teeth were pulled to put into his nasty mouth, pardon me. But, and that he indeed could lie. And one of those lies, not only was that these soldiers would be given freedom, but they promised, did I read somewhere that they were also promised land? They were promised.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm. Well, the thing with, for service in the Revolutionary War, the soldiers were able to file for pensions and for land. Land bounty warrants is what they called them. And soldiers did after the war, many years after the war, but it was particularly hard for African Americans to get their land, if they got any, and to get their pensions. Now, many got their pensions, but they had to fight for it. Okay. As an example, there's an African American from the Dennis family from Pennsylvania, one of the oldest continuously owned, Denise Dennis, one of the oldest continually owned plots of land from African Americans in this country. But Denise Dennis wrote a book about her ancestor who fought in the Revolutionary War from the Connecticut line, and they were at Gulf Mills. I talk about her ancestors every time I speak, but he walked hundreds of miles to directly meet his commanding officer and get him to sign his pension application. So there was no question that he fought in the Revolutionary War. And then he walked back home to file the pension, and he got his pension. So it wasn't easy for African American soldiers to get what was promised to them.
I have a question about those people who want to do that genealogy work. As you were talking about this, this person knowing that they are a descendant. We were fortunate as a family to have Henry Louis Gate and his team do that work for us. Right. Average people do not have access to that level of expertise in those resources. But I imagine that there's probably someone listening now who is wondering, well, I wonder if maybe one of my ancestors fought in the Revolutionary War, and how would I find out? Are there records?
Yes.
What do we do?
I can speak to that. Okay. Besides a lot of records where you used to have to go physically to archives and go through all the papers, dig through them to find information. Now a lot of that information is online through such sites like Ancestry.com, etc. But one beautiful thing now is DNA. So I've been saying my family, I had my brother get his Y DNA test. It's a test that only males can get. They have the Y DNA or the Y chromosome. And it can trace your ancestry all the way back, I don't know, to the Middle Ages. So I told my brother, get your test, because in my family, we had an enslaved, my great-great-grandfather was enslaved in South Carolina. He said his father was his enslaver. He was forced to fight in the Civil War, go with his half-brother to fight for the Confederacy. Then they were captured, and he ended up becoming a member of the U.S. Colored Troops. So we're trying to trace our ancestry back to South Carolina. We all in our families have these oral stories handed down. So with my brother's DNA test, it showed, okay, it's true. This was his father, my great-great-grandfather. It was his enslaver. So these stories that we hear, there is a way to trace your family all the way back to the Middle Ages. So now, Vance, we're in the Vance family heritage group, which is a large group that spans countries. We're from Scotland, Ireland, all of that. So there is a way. Get these Y DNA tests, the male in your family.
You know, there's a society for first Africans in America.
Okay.
And those societies are now genealogy societies for African Americans who are tracing their ancestry. But I want to just reiterate something that Sheila said, and that is when you have these stories in your family that are unverified and nobody's really thought about it, and they go, oh, well, I was always told X, or look at that. Because we can be credible witnesses for our own past. And so when you hear this, do not dismiss it. There's something there. Now, you think that if, before 1870, people really think, oh, you can't go back. Well, you can. The records are different. You have to dig more deeply. The DNA is very helpful, but you can get back there. And there are societies out there to help you do that.
What was the one you just named?
The Society for First Africans in America.
For First Africans in America. Okay, I'm going to look into that.
And if you let me know, and I can put you in touch with their President General, Rick Murphy, who really has been just really instrumental in just pushing this story forward, writes about First Africans. He's very dedicated to this subject.
Okay. No, I love that. And as I say, I mean, you'd be surprised at what you found out. My father was tickled that he had one ancestor that was a Black loyalist and another one who fought for the Confederacy. He's like, I've always been on the wrong side of history. So anyway, listen, we're going to take a break and we're going to come back. We're talking to Sheilah Vance and Dr. Cheryl LaRoche. You're listening to Urban View Mornings with Shawna Renee. You're listening to Urban View Mornings with Shawna Renee. And in studio, we have Dr. Cheryl LaRoche and Sheilah Vance. So the two of them are going to come together in Philadelphia on Monday for an event called Same Ground, the President's House, Valley Forge, and the question of whose story gets told. So just want you to know that it's going to be on July 6th, 5 to 8 at the Fashion District Love Lab on Market Street in Philadelphia. And then it's going to be the two of you and a former city council person?
Yes. Blondell Reynolds Brown, 5-term Philadelphia city councilwoman who has written her memoir, which is part memoir, part political roadmap of how she got to become a councilwoman and impact Philadelphia. So it's really the arc.
That's okay.
It's really the arc of African-American participation in this democratic experiment. She is living history.
Okay.
She did it. Our ancestors fought for her.
Excellent. So lots of history of Philadelphia, but I want to just turn left for a minute. Actually, I want to go a little further north because during the break, you mentioned, Dr. LaRoche, that and we talked about this the first time that you were here, that not only were you instrumental in the excavating the information that we now know at the Philadelphia House, but you were at that African burial ground in New York City, and that was such a huge story. And that kind of ties into the Revolutionary War as well.
Well, it ties into what we're talking about because the burial ground closes right after the American Revolution. But we also know that the Blacks who leave the United States for Canada leave from New York City in this time period. They are leaving and going into Canada and shipping out from that space. And so the African burial ground really is in the center of all of this history at the beginning as they are leaving. And so I just wanted to give you, I always like to go back a little further.
Sure.
And let you know that the burial ground has significance beyond the burials themselves as a place in Manhattan, in Lower Manhattan. So when you think about people leaving, they mostly ship out. Many of those 5,000 people, including George Washington's enslaved man, who is also named Washington, he ships out from New York City. So it's just, I want you to have that longer view.
And that is interesting, because the other thing we were talking about is, as we do this work, like, because what we're doing is we're putting together stories. You're researching and we're being historians, but when it comes to, I think, researching one's family, you're building a story. And so it can be very difficult, though, sometimes, like when in building those stories, things come up that are uncomfortable. And we have like a tendency to say, well, this was a loving relationship. I was just telling you that when we had our family history done, it was kind of presented to us that there was in South Carolina, there was a white male descendant and a black female descendant, and they lived next door to each other and they had kids. And, he loved her so much that he bought her a house, but because in South Carolina, they couldn't be together. And I was like, that's a sweet story, but just what I know about history tells me that there's a possibility it could have been something totally different.
Can I just add?
Oh, sure, go ahead.
South Carolina, that's where my great-great-grandfather was from. And when I said we found out that his father was his enslaver. And his mother, we knew the mother was named Rose. She's just called Rose the cook. No one gave her, they don't get the dignity enslaved people of a last name. So there you go. That's the cook right there in the house. And that was the mother.
I want to come back to George Washington yet again.
Okay, please.
I've been working on Arlington House, which is George Washington or Martha Washington's grandson's home. And so this conversation about white male paternity is particularly fraught, and it's something that I've been looking at because I know my next book will be about Black women, slavery, and white male paternity. It's often very difficult to prove. He claims that he fathered hundreds of children by Black women. We don't know that that's true. We found at least one, probably two or three, at least. But that proving it, so that sometimes the family locks down the DNA.
Okay.
Sometimes you can't get back to where you need to through DNA.
Exactly.
But if you look at, and this is one of the points in the book, not the one that I've written about the kids, but the next one, if you look at what they call the rise of the mulatto class, that is living proof, so that the offspring, the children, the people who are walking around, the Miss Anne knew that was her husband's child.
Sure.
So that we have to start to be very clear about the language we use, this stuff about concubines and lovers and relationships. We have to be intentional about how we talk about this. And when you think about the power dynamic, we're talking about white men.
Yeah.
Right.
And that is not something that we know that accountability and whiteness don't go together. And asking for white male accountability around sexual exploitation and rape is something that we can't get today. I don't know why you think we're going to get it 400 years, 300 years, 200 years back.
Yeah.
But that is the problem.
Yeah. Yeah. It reminds me of a conversation, too, that I had with some folks down in New Orleans, because they have a very special and specific way of talking about relationships between, Black white men and Black women and the passé blanc. And,
So, when they go to French and Latin, they start talking Latin, y'all be worried.
Right. I mean, we have to have those very difficult conversations is the point that I'm making. And I appreciate the both of you for doing that, and for, as Black women, we tend to have those conversations responsibly because we cannot afford not to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I have to say a story when we were, again, doing this Y-DNA research, that a historian related to the family said, well, before we got the results, he might have said that's his father, but Rose the cook, she might have had sex with many other men, and that might not have been him. He might have just wanted to claim, his enslaver as his father. And I was thinking, do not disparage my great-great-great-grandmother.
Right.
Okay, so then when the results came back, here it is. Here it is.
Right. No,
This is
exactly.
true.
Exactly.
It was him.
Yes. All right. So let's, speaking of stories, let's get back to the Philadelphia house. Because as I mentioned in the beginning of this interview, it has been in the news. The president comes down. He says, hey, listen, we don't want to hear about all that slavery talk. Take them plaques down off that house. And then the judge comes and says, wait a minute. No, you can put them back up. Then I don't remember which circuit court it was, but the one that's down there said, or up there said, third. Thank you. The Third Circuit Court said, well, okay, you can put them back up, but, there needs to be that the federal government can decide the language. So you said that you've seen them. And I can imagine you must have been livid when you heard that all of the work that you had done, because not only had you excavated it, but my understanding is you also participated in deciding what was going to be on those plaques, how that story was going to be told.
And not only did I work with I was there at the groundbreaking. I worked with the archaeologists. I also worked with the interpretive team, but I also was on the platform for all those months talking to the public about this site. I interacted with the public and wrote 2 reports afterwards about the site and wrote the nomination for the Network to Freedom because of Only Judges Escape. So I have been across the board, and now that I'm not officially working with NPS, I joined ATTACK, the Avenging the Ancestors Coalition and Michael Cord's group, because we need all of the push that we can get. But the word I've been using lately is disappointment.
Oh, okay. That's fair.
I'm beyond anger. To think that my country that I love, my father is a Purple Heart winner from World War II. I am a patriot to my core. To see my country lie, to see my country decide that this history is not important enough to be told, but what they're really deciding is that it's too important to be told, is actually, and to watch their shame over their behavior is something that I cannot tolerate anymore. I am much more outspoken now. You just want to do your work. Yeah. You don't want to get into politics, but politics is messing with my stuff.
Yes. Don't we all feel that way? Yes.
So now, all right, so now I'm here. It's kind of like the Pope. What are you doing in religion? Well, but anyway, I don't mean to compare myself to the Pope. But what I'm trying to say is that this is not the first time that this has happened. We have always had a game plan for moving forward. We always turn inward to one another, which is what we're doing right now inside of the Sirius XM sort of shield. We have to turn inward. We have to go back, trust each other where we are trustworthy, know who is trustworthy, and we have to get the work done. Because this is where we are. So yes, I might be disappointed, but I'm not stopped.
Oh, I love that. I love that. You've given me a couple of ideas for T-shirts here. Politics is messing with my stuff, and I might be disappointed, but I'm not stopped. No, I love that. So, what can we do specifically with the president's house? Are we kind of stuck, or are they going to take it, appeal the decision?
So there's some things underway that it's not time to talk about yet.
Fair.
We got to huddle in the struggle. So we're huddling.
I got you.
So there's some things underway that you will be seeing. This is ATTACK. You think they're going to stop?
Yeah.
We're not going to stop. We're going to pivot.
Okay.
So fine. But I want to say something about the panels that I've seen that are supposed to go up. And I haven't been back to Philadelphia I like to physically walk my sites. When you look at the panels, there's a discussion about slavery. There's a discussion about George Washington. That they have Martin Luther King and I Have a Dream speech. They have Harriet Tubman. They have Frederick Douglass. All of these kumbaya moments. What they don't have is George Washington owning slaves. What they don't have is people escaping from slavery. What they don't have is the direct discussion that we had on the platform about the founding of the country and the basis of the wealth of this nation is on the backs of enslaved people. That's not there.
And that's so important. Also, do they still have the names? Because that was the thing that really stood out to me about those plaques, was that you named the people.
We put the names in stone.
Okay.
The names are carved in stone.
Okay. All right.
You will have to destroy the monument to take those names down.
Okay.
They're in stone.
All right.
They're carved in stone.
And that's important.
That's
I've
important.
often said, like even if the explanation is not there, the name can start to, who is this?
And it humanizes.
Yes.
This mass of quote unquote slaves, they never had a humanity. Right. When you moved to enslaved, at least you took the onus off of the person and put it on the person that was acting upon them. But now to have the names of the people, the history of the people, you can still go to ushistory.org, which was mounted when we first started this project. It's still there. It has the biographies of all 9 enslaved Africans who were there with George Washington, most of whom actually belong to Martha Washington. So let's just remember that it is Martha Washington who is the huge enslaver in this equation.
Yeah, the whole book written about it.
Yes.
Her property too.
Can I just add something about,
sure.
again, the evolution over 250 years of freedom and our role in it? And when you talk about the legal fight that's coming after this Third Circuit Court of Appeals decision, the mayor of Philadelphia is a fabulous, dynamic African-American woman named Cheryl Parker.
Yes.
And that is the evolution of this freedom fight and struggle. Mayor of Philadelphia, first African-American woman mayor. And Cheryl has said in no uncertain terms, the city of Philadelphia is going to continue its fight to tell the truth at the president's house. It has a role. It had a promise to have some input. The city have input in the language on these panels when they were constructed, and they're fighting for their rights. And Cheryl Parker is not letting this go, and she's going to move this thing forward. If she has to go to Supreme Court and keep going, that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, shout outs to Mayor Parker. Well, listen, we're running out of time, so I just want to remind folks, because I'm like, listen, I will not be in Washington, D.C. on the 4th of July, honey. Nowhere near it. But there are so many places that we can go all over the country to commemorate and acknowledge, as you say, Dr. LaRoche, the fact that we built this, as we like to say. I don't care what Megyn Kelly said. We built this.
Right.
But I do want everyone who may be in, near, and around Philadelphia on Monday to come by same ground. It's the President's House, Valley Forge, and the question of whose story gets told. And so Sheilah Vance will be there, and Dr. Cheryl LaRoche will be there as well. I'm sorry, remind me of the other sister, the city council person.
Reynolds.
Yeah, she will be there as well. So it is at the Fashion District Love Lab. That's on Market Street in Philadelphia. And that's Monday. So that's on July the 6th from 5 to 8. And we will make sure, if we've got like social media, like a clip or something, we'll make sure to put it up. Sure. You want to?
It's 925 Market Street.
Oh, it's 920. Okay, 925 Market Street. Okay. All right, very good. So either way, there's a Eventbrite. So I will have Vance put the Eventbrite up on our Blue Sky as well as our other social media platforms. Listen, hours. We could do this for hours, but since we don't have hours, I guess that means we'll just have to have you both back.
Oh, great. Happy to come back.
Always a delight.
Always
Very
a pleasure.
good.
It's been a pleasure. Yes.
Always a pleasure. Thank you so much. All right, let's take a break and we will be back. You're listening to Urban View Mornings with Shawna Renee.